As I mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, you have the ability when generating printed documentation to organize your topics differently in that printed documentation than the standard layout you have in your project. So here on the second screen of our printed documentation wizard, you'll notice on the left-hand side we have a TOC. Our current TOC is selected from the general properties that we just went through in the previous lesson. So if you're jumping to this particular lesson, you can double-click the printed documentation in the single source layouts and then click Next to move to this next screen. Now the TOC we see over here has different TOC books that we can double-click to expand. You'll notice the various topics, and you'll also notice the icons are shaded in blue. And by default, if we expand all of these, you're going to see the exact same thing over here on the right. The blue means the topic is included in our chapter layout for our printed document. So for example, if we were to remove any of these, like membership for example, we would click it over here on the right hand side under chapter layout, and you'll notice that we have some buttons here in between for adding and removing. Clicking the single arrow pointing left allows us to remove it, and notice it's no longer shaded in blue over here, telling us that it's not included in our chapter layout for our printed document. So if we did want it, we could click it, click the right arrow this time to move it back in. There we go. Now notice the naming over here. It looks a little bit different. For example, memberships, membership. That's because we're actually using the table of contents and the name of the topic as opposed to the name that we see in the table of contents. But that's okay. It's still going to work out the exact same way that we see here in our project unless we start moving things around here on the right hand side. For example, if membership should go first, we can use the little arrows to move it up so it becomes the first topic and then welcome. Doesn't make sense, so we'll move that back up. We can also move things to different levels. Right now, each of these TOC books is a chapter, and then we have different sections inside these chapters based on the table of contents or topics that we see down below. So if we want to move them up, maybe welcome, we could click the left arrow to move left, and you can see now it's at a different level than membership. If we want to move it back, no problem. Move it up, and we're rearranging our chapter layout. So we can have a totally different layout than what we see in our actual project here on the left hand side using our TOC. Now just before we continue on to the next step, let's go down to the very bottom of this right hand pane where you see a checkbox for maintaining HTML heading levels. So if you're using headings, heading 1, heading 2, etc. in your topics, you can maintain those here in the printed document. I like that feature, and that way our headings will always stick, and because we're going to be creating a Word document from this which uses headings, it's all going to work out nicely for us if we maintain those HTML heading levels. Alright, so we're ready to move on to the next step. Clicking the next button takes us to the area where we organize the sections of our document using our section layout. We'll talk about that next.